Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Welcome. I'm Inez Gonzalez, and I am the Executive Director of Police Civilian Oversight here in the City of Charlottesville. To my right here, we have Mr. James Walker, the Management Analyst for the PCOB, and shortly the board members themselves will be introducing themselves to you. But I do want to make a couple of quick acknowledgments. I want to thank, first and foremost, my boss, Mr. Sam Sanders, for being here this evening with us. Thank you for that. Also, former mayor and current city councilor, Mr. Lloyd Snood, is here with us as well. Thank you, sir, for your being here. I also saw the Chief of Police, Chief of Police Michael Koches, who was very gracious enough to accept my invitation to be here with us tonight as well. Some additional acknowledgments. We want to thank Mrs. Burdell Fleming for being here. Mr. Charles Fleming, her husband, served honorably with the Police Civilian Oversight Board and recently passed away, so we want to thank him for his service and thank Mrs. Fleming for being here with us this evening. We'd also like to thank Mr. Eugene Williams, who is one of the founders of the Albemarle Charlottesville chapter of the NAACP. Thank you, sir, for being here. A very good friend of mine, Reverend Patricia Jones-Turner, who is the Director of Training for White Feather Educational Historical Project. Ms. Lynn Boyd, who is the current president of the Albemarle Charlottesville NAACP. I thought I saw Mr. Harold Foley somewhere with the People's Coalition back there. Thank you, sir, for being here. My good friend Gloria Beard. And again, no particular order, and I apologize if I didn't call you out, but please get my attention later on so that I can acknowledge everyone that's here that's worked so hard. I also want to thank all of the individuals that were here long before Mr. Sanders knew who I was, that actually made the PCOB possible for all of the work. Again, so we have had challenges, but if it had not been for you, one, I wouldn't have a job, and two, we wouldn't have any semblance of oversight. So it was because of that hard work that we were here today, so thank you all for all of that. Now I'd like to turn it over to the chair, our newly appointed chair of the PCOB, so that he can introduce himself, and so that the rest of the board can introduce themselves as well.
Thank you very much. So my name is Al Cola. I'm the new chair, as Inez said, of the PCOB. I've been trying to go around and say hello to everybody. I am newly minted in Charlottesville. I've been here for 4 years. I moved down here with my wife, now currently happily retired, although being chair of the PCOB has kind of shot that out the window. So, we look forward to serving you, not only on the PCOB, but as your chair. I think tonight you will find that we're looking for you to give us some feedback. And I'm looking forward to a really exciting night. I will say this, as a former volunteer firefighter and EMT, the fire exits are here and there. So I can't be remiss if I said that. So thank you very much.
My name is Andrew Fry. I'm a daytime incarnations working at Region Tech. I'm a new person to the board. I've been just on the board since February. I was appointed. Still starting to get my feet. I've been living somewhere in this area since 1985. I've been back in the city from the county for 8 years. So, glad to see everybody here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is George Dillard. I'm a resident of Charlottesville all my life. I'm a retired law enforcement for 31 years. I am the first vice president on the NAACP. I've been on this board for 3 years.
Hello, I'm Kyle Dobson. I am new to the board as of this year, and I am in my day job. I'm a University of Virginia professor in public policy, and I work with police on a lot of research to improve community well-being.
Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Dillard-Titus, and I too am new to the board. I live in Albemarle County. My wife is a professor here at the University of Virginia. I am an attorney, a whistleblower attorney, and it's my great honor to serve the community and serve with my colleagues here on the board. Thank you.
My name is Isaiah Alvarez. I've lived in Charlottesville my entire life, 21 years, and I work in the hospitality industry. I'm very new to the board. Just started serving this past February, and I look forward to being filling role.
So we do have one board member who's not here tonight, and it is our one female member, Cameron McBride. So she is not here, but I wanted to let you know that we do have one additional member, or two additional members, sorry. Dr. Frazier as well, Dr. Jeff Frazier. Can't count. All right, and then we'll go ahead and transition into a little bit of talk about an overview of the Police Civilian Oversight Board. So we wanted to just give a quick overview. Well, thank you guys, sorry. I'm sure they wanted to sit back. Yeah, you're good. But one thing I wanted to share is our contact information is right up there and underneath. It's going to be on a couple different slides, so if you don't get it there, you can get it later. We also have in the back some of our literature, as well as bags that have our literature and some other gifts in them. So we should have plenty for everybody who's here, but our contact information is back there as well. And if you picked up an agenda, you'll see on there, we have got a couple things tonight, a couple different things. So right now we're at that 5:50 time overview, and we will have an initial set of questions that go along with this, questions, comments, and answers at 6 o'clock. But then we'll be transitioning over to the University of Virginia Institute for Engagement and Negotiation. They are here partnering with us tonight to help collect as a third party what your comments are, what your ideas and opinions are, and they will be facilitating a small group session. So we will be introducing them when we get down to that 6:10 mark. Then we'll be recapping everything, and following at the end, we'll just have another time for questions and comments. So that kind of overlays what we're going to do this evening. So the role of the board, I think, has evolved over time, but as Director Gonzalez and I have talked a lot, we kind of boiled it down to this. So the role of the board is really to enhance public safety and protect civil rights by providing independent, objective oversight of the Charlottesville Police Department, fostering accountability, transparency, and community trust in law enforcement. And as a side goal to that, the other role is to serve as a bridge between the community and the police, investigating complaints, recommending policy improvements, and working to eliminate bias and misconduct. And really to advocate for everyone who seeks assistance, just also knowing that we follow the same laws, rules, and procedures as the police department. So a lot of times in the slides you'll see the police department referred to as CPD, just because it's long to write it all out. But those are really our two main goals. So truly having that transparent approach, and that's why we're here tonight, trying to be transparent. Everything that is said and collected tonight will be produced in a final report. So it will be public, the ideas and the thoughts from tonight, and that's something that we'll be able to share with the City Council, with our City Manager, and with the Chief of Police. Our outcomes, hopefully to help the community understand what the PCOB ordinance directs the board and the Executive Director to do, and to answer questions about how that differs from the practical implementation of those duties. So a lot of times, we'll be asked questions, and those questions might be things that we do have the power to do in our ordinance, but there are day-to-day practical limitations that may not allow us to do everything. So Director Gonzalez is going to dive in depth about that. And also our goal is to meet the expectations of the community, to both understand what the community wants and to educate the community on the advocacy needed to advance those expectations. And so as many know, the original birth of the Police Civilian Oversight Board came from 2017 with the Unite the Right rally here in Charlottesville. And at that time, there was a strong advocacy for the need for this. And so here we are many years later, still trying to develop and drive this mission forward. And lastly, our next steps after tonight, the UVA Institute for Engagement and Negotiation will provide a summary of ideas, concerns, and suggestions from tonight. And I mentioned some of these. A presentation of the summary will be provided to the Police Civilian Oversight Board, and a report made available to the City Manager, the City Council, and the Police Department. And finally, as an outcome of this, the Board will develop potential changes to the ordinance, as well as policy recommendations for the Police Department. And so now I will be passing off to Director Gonzalez to discuss really the meat of why we're here.
Thank you. And I just wanted to highlight again, if there's anyone who wants to ensure that you receive a copy of the final report, please make sure that you sign in over there and provide us with your email address so that we know to send that final report to you. So let's get into it. The majority of what we're going to be discussing tonight are things that we extracted from articles where the community was being very critical about what it is we can and cannot do because, again, as Mr. Walker indicated, there seems to be a disconnect between people understanding what it is we're legally able to do, what it is we can practice. And so these were extracted from many of those articles where people had comments. So let's dive into it. So the first four things that you see on the top are the things that probably are the most challenging for the PCOB to do. And then what you see on the bottom is what we can actually do and what we're engaging in right now. So let's talk about those first because they're the easiest. Recommending policy changes to the police department. So what happens? I'll make recommendations to the PCOB based on current investigations that might be taking place with the police department, complaints that may have come in. And what I'll do, I'll say, well, this is right, something that's a hot topic right now, and I'll make a recommendation for them to look at it, review it, and make policy recommendations. They will collectively make those recommendations, and they will put a final report together that I ultimately will send to the chief of police with a cover saying, this is what the PCOB is recommending you change about this policy. Or they'll also get into something, for example, where we'll make a recommendation for a policy to be created if there's none in existence currently. So that's something that they're doing now and have done already, and a lot of those changes have in fact been implemented by the chief of police. Engaging in community outreach. That's how I met most of you. I'll be celebrating my second year with the city of Charlottesville May 1st, and it was in 2 months that I was hired where I was at the Chahama Festival, Sabroso Festival, Pride, every festival in the city of Charlottesville, I was there. Essentially getting all of our information out there so that people can, I guess, give me an idea, what is you looking for? What would you like to see us do? And so this is how I met most of you, through our community outreach. And so we're trying to now engage in a little bit more targeted outreach than we have before. Because again, we spent 2 years actually distributing our information, so I don't think the issue is that you don't know that we exist. I think the issue is whether or not you have any confidence that we could do anything about whatever your concern is. So that's what I have to work on. I would resonate with at least one of you. Reviewing police budgets. That is something that we have been doing since my first year here. We will actually review the police budget and we'll see how it is the chief of police is spending the money to make sure that everything, for example, if they're budgeted for training and they're not using their remaining funds, that's something that we need to know because training is usually a very large part of what can go wrong with police officers in the street, is them not understanding their own policy, not understanding the law, because it was never actually taught to them appropriately. I can tell you this, the chief of police invested some time in having to engage in additional supplemental training after the police recruits graduate from the police academy, just to enhance their knowledge of things that may not have actually been covered in the regional academy, at the regional academy level. So he's identified deficiencies that he's actually addressing with the supplemental training. That usually takes anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, I believe. Produce limited public reports. So yes, we have, now that I have a management analyst, been producing monthly reports that essentially report to all of you what it is we're doing in terms of activity, both what the board does and what we do as members of city staff. Because again, there is a distinction between the activity that the board engages in versus what it is he and I do on a day-to-day basis. Now, we are of course limited in what it is we can report, and we're going to have a discussion about that down the line because police information is protected by, I want to say it's Virginia Code 2.2-3706B9, which says that the chief of police is the custodian of that information, and in the end, the release of that information is ultimately within his purview. And hosting town halls, that's why we're here today. Why it wasn't done in the past, I cannot tell you, but I can tell you that we'll continue to do the town halls as is required by our ordinance. Our ordinance requires us to do them twice a year, and so you can expect us to have another town hall somewhere between August and December. We'll have our next town hall. So I hope that we learn so much from this one that it'll make the next one that much more productive. All right, so let's get into the things that you all have been complaining about. The conduct of investigations. So I will ask you, I will pose the question to you. Do you all believe that the board members can actually conduct investigations? Does anybody? Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and wait and pull teeth, right? They can. They can conduct investigations. The ordinance says so. But the question that I think people are missing is, how does a board, is a volunteer board works only, or that meets once a month, actually engage in an investigation of police personnel? What would that look like? We have 75 days for them to conduct their investigations. The police department has 45 days in order to conduct their investigation. So the timelines are misaligned. So that's one of the recommendations that I'll be making concerning our timelines marrying up to the police department's timelines. Why is that important? It's important because they are now involved in collective bargaining, so they have rights. There are certain rules and regulations, obligations that we have to comply with as it pertains to collective bargaining. So it wouldn't be fair for them to have concluded their investigation within 45 days and then wait 75 days for us to conclude ours, if we can even get it done in that time frame, to wait before he implements discipline, if discipline is actually necessary or called for in that particular situation. So that's one of the disconnects between, yes, can we do investigations? We can, but what would that look like with a volunteer board that meets only once a month? Recommendations for discipline. The problem with the recommendations for discipline is essentially piggyback off of what it is I just discussed. How do you make recommendations for discipline when by the time his process is done, by the time the investigation is done within 45 days, by the time the chief of police reviews it, by the time that discipline is implemented, by the time the appeals process plays itself out, our board will still be engaging in their investigation. And so then, is it fair in terms of due process for that officer to have to wait until the board is done with their investigation in order to make recommendations for discipline? All probability has already been imposed. That's problem number one. Number two is, part of our ordinance says that we can make recommendations for discipline, but further down in the ordinance it says that disciplinary recommendations from the board will not be used during the appeals process. That's a problem. It's a contradiction. So then what is the purpose of the recommendation for discipline? And that's something that was also included in the actual contract that was signed with the police union. It indicates that we cannot make recommendations for discipline that will be used for appeal. The other issue is this. Because we're involved in collective bargaining, you have to remember that the chief of police has to justify when he imposes discipline, what the justification for that discipline is. He also is obligated to utilize a matrix that the police department has. That's something that I believe, Chief, is available to the public.
Yeah, it's an accreditation.
So it's an accreditation standard. So it is something that's public information, so you'll be able to see where the disconnect exists there. So that's a problem that we have to iron out. It's not impossible to overcome. We just have to make sure that our timelines are married up to theirs and that we're able to engage in these investigations at the same time. But that is the challenge. Again, how does a board that meets only once a month get that done? Conducting audits. That's actually something that we are in the process of doing. We've been doing flock audits, not as many as we would like, because again, we're limited in terms of personnel. It is a very time-consuming, labor-intensive process in order to do a flock audit, as the chief will tell you. It can take a full day to just audit one day. So, and it takes at least 3 different software programs that we have to utilize in order to actually conduct those audits. So it's again very time-consuming and not something that we can devote every day to. It just doesn't work out that way. There's just no time. But we are conducting audits. We do review investigations that have been conducted by the Charlottesville Police Department. We review them to see if they were accurate, if all the bases were covered, and just to see if there were any deficiencies or opportunities to make recommendations for policy changes in the future or additional policies if necessary. Let's see. We covered all of that. And again, the practical limitations on the right side are essentially things that I already talked about. We have a volunteer board. The other thing there about compelling testimony, why is that important? So, there's a case referred to as Garrity versus the state of New Jersey. When you compel a police officer to give testimony in an administrative investigation of personnel, that provides the officer with the protections offered by that case law. And so any information that that officer provides during that interview, during the interview process, will not be used against them in a criminal court of law. So people say, well, why can't they just volunteer? If you volunteer to give me testimony, you will not be afforded the protections of Garrity versus the state of New Jersey. Because in order for those to kick in, you have to be compelled to provide testimony under the condition that you will either be disciplined or terminated if you fail to do so. Why that's important. And that's where the limitation happens for the board, because they are not employees of the city. The question is, can they legally compel a police officer? And right now the answer, there is no answer to that, because there is no case law that talks specifically about Sylvian oversight bodies. Now, if they were full-time employees of the city, as is the case in many other parts of the country, like Chicago, the CCRB in New York, Oakland, California, they do in fact have the ability to compel police officers to provide testimony, but they're also full-time employees appointed specifically to do that job, and they work 40 hours a week, 5 days, 40 hours a week. So That's the distinct difference. I don't think that we have an answer yet in terms of case law as it pertains to volunteer individuals. And of course, James and I talked about before is the oversight that's being conducted in the city of Charlottesville right now involves just James and I. So we got slammed last week with 3 investigations, complaints one after the other. And so it gets to take up a lot of our time. So that's a problem by itself. It's just not having enough staff to do the kind of oversight that we'd like to do. If we had more, we'd do more, but you have to work within the confines of what it is we have. No discipline without an internal affairs investigation, something else that the chief can speak to. What we are allowed to do is investigations, but they're not considered complete investigations. Why are they not complete? Because they lack the officers' interviews, which means we're not providing the police officers with the due process necessary to do a complete investigation. You have to give the opportunity to explain the actions that we're taking. So, can they make recommendations? Yes, we'll accept those recommendations for discipline absent an internal affairs investigation. It includes the testimony of witnesses and witness officers, target officers, and that. The answer is no, he will not. Limited participation. As you can see from tonight's meeting, we have 8 board members trying to get those 8 people to show up to training, town halls, monthly meetings. It's challenging because, again, with the exception of 2 of our members, 80% of our board is comprised of individuals who have full-time jobs. So it is challenging to get them here. Plus, people have other obligations to their family, people get sick. So there's people that are not here this evening specifically because they couldn't make it. So trying to get quorum was something that we found challenging within the first year and a half that I was here. Just trying to get enough members to show up to a monthly meeting so that they can vote on things was a challenge all by itself. Now, hopefully that's over and done with. We have at least 4 new members on the board that I believe are breathing new life into our board, and I expect that we're going to be achieving a lot more with the group that we have now, to including the fact that we have a brand spanking new chair, and he has been just night and day and wonderful to work with. So again, I'm looking forward to a very productive relationship with this particular board. Restricted access to data systems. Why is that important? Okay. Well, James and I are employees of the city of Charlottesville. Fortunately, Chief Kachis has allowed us to become CJIS trained. CJIS is Criminal Justice Information Systems, which means that we are fully aware of the fact that he and I can both go to jail if we use any of the systems that we now have access to. And so, ever since we signed and the chief and I collectively worked together on an SOP and MOU, along with the deputy city attorney from the city of Charlottesville, on creating an SOP and MOU that actually granted us access again to everything that we lost before. But now we have more access than we have ever had before, and we have more access than any other oversight body in the state of Virginia, which is really great. That includes access to floor cameras. It includes access to the records management system, Power DMS. Let's see, what else? There's about 6 different databases that we now have access to that we didn't have access to before. So that's a big plus because it helps us do more without actually having to go to them for everything that we require. So that's a huge plus. But can board members do that? And the answer is, right now, no, because they're not employees of the city. So how would we hold them accountable for misusing any of those databases? And that's the question. So there's manuals and documentation. One of the things that I found the most challenging about our ordinance, as well as our operating procedures, it is a very document-heavy document, meaning that each one of those documents requires me to create more documents before I can actually do my job. As an example, I have to create an investigations manual before I can conduct an investigation. So either I can author the manual or I can do the investigation. I actually thought I was hired because of the fact that I have 26 and a half years experience with investigations into police personnel. So, but again, if I have to author a manual, it becomes a little bit more challenging. The same thing applies to the audit. I have to create an audit manual before I can actually conduct an audit according to the paperwork. So there's that. And the restrictions in terms of criminal, civil, and juvenile matters, that's just a matter of law. We don't have access to those things. So if an investigation comes in with a matter that has a criminal matter pending, we don't have access to it. If it involves juveniles, we do not have access to it. That's just state law. And civil matters, if there is the potential for an existing civil lawsuit, we cannot get involved, and that's all right from our ordinance. So, questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do y'all expect to get anything accomplished one day a month? That don't make sense. I mean, then, oh my God. I mean, for real now, anybody who comes, no, you can't do this kind of work in one month. What do you mean? And people, like you said, some of you people have jobs. Some gotta get it.
Okay, so not a question but a statement. Thank you for that support. Yes, it does require maybe one or two more people, but know this, work is getting done. We are doing investigations, we are doing audits, work is getting done. Not as much as I would like, but again, I'm grateful to have what I have. I should say, but we are working on it. Do I get rest? I'm about to. Thank you, sir. One more.
Good evening, everyone. I was blessed to be one of the members of the original PCOB. And what I've seen so far tonight, and we've still got an hour and 15 minutes, what I've seen so far is just a list comprised of what it is that you can't do. That's not why we're here. We want to know what it is that you can do to fix this mess that it's become. And we're not looking for a panacea, but we're looking for something viable that folks can leave here feeling good about, that, yeah, at least we're headed in the right direction. And so far, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but so far, I haven't heard it.
So good question. I'll answer it very quickly before I turn it over to Tanya and her group. Well, I say that I respectfully disagree. So we're in a better position now than we were before I got here. We're able to do a lot more than anyone has done before I got here. So we are able to do it. The question is, how do we get the board members to do that? All right, so there's no restriction against Mr. Walker doing the work. The restriction comes in, there's an expectation that the board can do that. So what we have to try to figure out is how do we do that. Now, to answer your question, I'm hoping that the outcome here is that you all will provide recommendations and suggestions that I can bring back to my boss and to the council to say, this is what they're looking for and this is why they're looking for that. And if I can make a legitimate argument, then maybe they'll listen. I can make no promises, but the point is for us to come up with those recommendations. But there was another half of that list that told you all the we can do that we couldn't do before. Okay. And so hopefully maybe we can change that. And I'm not going to make any promises. I don't have a magic wand that I can wave over the people that I work for. Again, like I said, I would just like for all of you now, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya and Kyle. She's going to break you up into groups, and hopefully this is going to be a far more productive town hall than we've had before, simply because we're actually looking for specific input from all of you. Tanya?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your introduction to the issues. So this is when, the suggestion from Harold Foley and Don. Hopefully, we want suggestions from all of you. So what we're going to do is each of you has a name tag. If you don't have a name tag, right, grab a name tag, and there will be a dot on it. And we're going to ask. Those with blue dots are going to go over to the station with my colleagues. Brian Williams is raising his hands, and you'll start there. And at that station you will have time to think about what are your concerns specifically and what suggestions you have. And then after a period of time, maybe 20 minutes at this point, we're going to ask people to go clockwise. Sorry, that's clockwise. So people at the police station would go over to this station, which is the PCOB. If you have a yellow on your name tag, a yellow sticky dot, you would start at the PCOB station. And same thing, we're going to be asking you, what are your concerns? Specifically, what are your suggestions? Director Gonzalez will be there at that station, and Chief Coaches will be over, I believe, at the police station. Oh, no? Okay. Okay, you're going to put your own concerns up. You're here as a citizen, that's fine. But if people have questions, I'm sure you're available. You're not here to guide, but you are here if they have questions. Okay, and then the last station over here, Selena Kozar, is facilitator, colleague. It is a place where we're interested in suggestions for how you can support the police or the PCOB in these changes, in these efforts to make changes in the time ahead. And so that's what that station is. If your name tag has a red on it, that's where you would start. So we're going to divide people up. Everybody will have time to be at every station. So we're really looking for a robust set of ideas and suggestions. There's time for some conversation and discussion as well. But you will be done and out of here by 7:30, and please help yourself to food along. So, any questions about this process before we get started? Any questions? All right, yes, ma'am.
How does this suggestion station differ from?
This is suggestions for how the community organizations or individuals can support this change effort, okay? And provide support along the way. So that's the difference, is these are suggestions, these are your concerns and suggestions for changes, right? Which are going to be presented to the board, and then ideally a set of recommendations presented to City Council for changing the ordinance. That is one of the desired outcomes that has been told to us, that's the hope of where this is aiming for. So it will need your support. Change will need your support. I think that's part of why this is here, for you to think through how can we support these changes that we're recommending. So great question. Any other questions? All right, if you don't have a name tag, grab a name tag that has a color dot, and otherwise we'll ask the blues to go over to Brian Williams in the corner to start talking about the police, the PCOB. If you've got yellow, come and be with me over there, and red, go to Selena Kozar. Okay. Yeah, bring chairs with you. Did you hear it? Over here for the police civilian oversight board, there's a whole bunch of ideas, but we have committed to trying to give what we think are the three biggest ideas that we've heard tonight. All of this is going to be reported, combined and listed in the report that we will give to the CPOB. We'll give a presentation, and then they will put together recommendations to City Council. Okay? So the biggest one overall is everyone. I mean, I think there was a big consensus that the CPOB needs more power, and the ordinance needs to change to do that. That was a really clear message tonight. The other thing is that board members need to be compensated and that they need more time. Those are the top three. There's a lot of specific suggestions that and there's lots of checks. Allow the director to sit in with the city councilors when interviewing candidates. This is a fourth really big idea. They need to be sitting in with candidates. So there's a lot of other ideas that have a lot of support here. But we said we would only cover the top three. You all, if you haven't put your name and email on that list, and you want a copy of the report, please put your name and email on that list at the registration desk. Okay, Selena. Thank you.
So here in our section over here was suggestions for support, how community members and organizations can come alongside the police and the PCOB to advance what the goals and desires are. A lot of the suggestions that came up were more directed for what the police and the PCOB could do, and those kind of fell into a couple of categories. One was to have more than 2 town halls a year, and with those have them be at different levels. So there's some people here in the room, for instance, who have deep knowledge of the history and the goals. And there are other people who are here that are new, who are interested, but don't have the backstory. So having meetings that can meet both levels so that people can really engage more deeply. And also for the PCOB to meet more often, that once a month can really hold things back. And then the third overall for both the PCOB and the police was to meet with organizations and individuals that want to come alongside, to start to have those conversations.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much, Selena. Okay, moving over here. Themes.
Great, thank you guys so much. Everyone who participated, I'll try to be as brief as I can. We had an umbrella, okay? We had some sub-points underneath this umbrella of lack of trust. This lack of trust was basically talking about lack of respect, transparency, oversight, and accountability, leading to lack of trust, manifested by disconnection with the community, unfair treatment, lack of communication. But then also, the last group we highlighted about youth. So how that plays out across our community. So those were the themes that emerged from concerns. I didn't get a chance to write down the themes that emerged from suggestions, but the gist of it primarily is how do we enhance relationships? And that's the huge umbrella. But training, right, really was a major sub-theme underneath that umbrella. Thinking about all assets based within our community. How do we best prepare officers to serve this community that's diverse, it's international, and they talk about identifying those assets that can really help them kind of have an appreciation for the blind spots that they do have. This all goes back to what Mr. Eugene Williams said, have things really improved? That was the question he brought to our conversation. He was looking back over the years, and he said we have to look at the whole picture. All of the systems, all of the structures that impact where we are today, and kind of think about how that manifests in terms of these interactions that our officers have with the residents of our community. Hopefully that kind of summarizes our group. Thank you guys once again.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for your amazing insights, suggestions, and as Selena said, those of you who bring a lot of knowledge and of the history of this situation. It's been really important. So we have time for some questions. I know there was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Rosia Parker. I want to make a clarification first before I ask the question. The CRB, PCRB, PCOB was created out of the People's Coalition, which was a community organization of 50 different organizations. We created this Police Civilian Review Board out of generational trauma, as well as disadvantaged communities and low income. That's what originally was created for. It wasn't just created out of 2017. That was when the money came and we was able to sit down and talk. It wasn't until 2019 before things was really pushed. This has been in existence for 7 years. So it's not like it just started. We had 7 people. Down, was it 8, down to 7? We did a lot of hours without money. We did a lot of hours without anything. We pushed this as a civilian reboard because we all stood out there and we fought and we watched the police stand down, not on just August 11th and 12th, July the 8th. I've been a victim of police brutality, not once, twice, 3 times. I've watched our children be harmed. We also have racist police officers. This was one of the reasons we definitely fought, because we still have one racist officer that is still on the police force. And they refused to get him off. When Brackley fought against us, instead of demoting him, she promoted him. So there are a lot of things that comes with this PCRB, PCOB. Also, the bylaws and ordinance have been changed, multiple. So the question that I also have, since this is the question part, have the bylaws and ordinance been changed since recently? But also too, is there any representatives on this board that's representing public housing, disadvantaged communities? This was the main thing that was supposed to be on the ordinance and bylaws. City council changed it. They did what they wanted to do.
So the answer to the question is, in terms of the ordinance has been changed. There was a recent change implemented by the City Council concerning residency requirements. That was a decision that they made without, I should say, that was not one of the changes we had recommended at the time. When was the most recent? November.
City Councilman right there.
So November of 2024, it included an expansion of allowing individuals that live or work in the county to be able to apply. We are right now in the process of making very specific recommendations to the council concerning some of the concerns that you all have expressed to me in the past about investigative powers and things like that. So we are in the process, and they are actually actively waiting for us to produce those recommendations so they can make decisions on them.
And one more thing. Ms. Inez, you do need to be in the application process. Not in the back, but in the front, as well as the clerk and the city council. I've applied for the last 6 or 7 years that this has been in existence. I've been blackballed. I've been refused to get on any board because I speak my mind, I speak for the people. Trust and transparency, in which we don't have. And the city still act like black lives don't matter. Brown lives don't matter. But when the pandemic was out, everything was Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. Black lives still don't matter. And that's what the board was really created for.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you for the clarification in terms of the history. I appreciate that. And like I said in the very beginning, we sincerely appreciate all the work that was done long before I even knew what my name was, who I was. Anybody have any additional questions? Yes, sir.
Just a couple of things. First, I would like to know why the ordinance was changed, because it was very important that the creation of the CRB, that various segments of the community were included, just to make sure that they had proper representation. I also understand now that Albemarle County residents are allowed to apply. Is that correct? Why? Can we go and investigate complaints in Albemarle County? Then why include them in the CRB for the city? That's nonsensical. What happens if this city council, in its infinite wisdom, decides to flood the board with Albemarle County residents who really don't have a stake in what goes on in the city proper?
They don't know what goes on in Charlotte.
Right. So I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, but I'm not understanding this. Why was the change made and what necessitated it?
I'm happy to answer the question.
I appreciate it.
The reason why the ordinance was changed
was that we were not getting enough applicants from the city.
Oh, no, that's not true. You turned this one down how many times?
We were,
Don't even go there.
I'm not going to talk about individuals, but I will tell you, we did not get, there was a time about a year ago when we did not get applicants who would fit the categories that were written into the ordinance, that we would be able to appoint to satisfy the ordinance. And so we had a choice. Either we go ahead with 4 members of the PCOB, none of whom were residents of public housing, only one of whom was African American, or we expand it to include people who have other connections to Charlottesville, but may not happen to live in the city of Charlottesville right now. We all know that in Charlottesville and Albemarle, people go back and forth. Some people live in Albemarle, and then a year later they may live in Charlottesville, and they may not even realize that they have moved from one jurisdiction to the other. So it was important that we appoint people who have, where possible, a strong connection, either because they live in Charlottesville or they work in Charlottesville. There was one person in particular that we were seriously thinking of approving, but that person lived in Fluvanna and did not have any real connection to Charlottesville. An excellent person all the way around, but we said, sorry, there's no connection to Charlottesville, we're not going to do that. So the reason we did it was specifically because we were not getting enough people who were applying who fit the categories that the statute permitted.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Yes, sir. Did you also ask about why the change from the PCRB to the PCOB in terms of why the ordinance changed?
If that is the case, and if that is the case, you just heard that you had, if not current, former resident of public housing, who could have very easily been placed there to represent that population, that segment of the people. Saying that someone has a stake in both the city and the county is like saying it would be okay for me as a resident of the state of Virginia to go and run for Senate in West Virginia. It just, that just doesn't jive up. If the board can't go and investigate claims in Albemarle County residents have no business being on the board. Just like we can't go to their board of supervisors meetings and apply for a position on any of their boards or structures over there. That's just way out of line and out of pocket. And that's something that really needs to be changed.
I think one of the things I want to make sure I'm going to be adding up there that should be on my wall for the PCOB suggestions is what you just said, Don, is this idea that the membership should be restricted to people who live in the city. That's a pretty clear suggestion that I'm hearing, and for the reasons you stated. So we'll make sure that that gets recorded. I saw another hand up back here, and then we have to be out of here.
This is something that Don raised, which is the fact is that there were people who were qualified for the Police Civilian Oversight Board that were rejected by the City Council. Lloyd wants to protect the City Council from having to reveal anything about their processes, about how they make decisions, about why they make decisions. But there are 2 of the people who made applications who were highly qualified who are in this room. Don Gathers and Rosita Parker. There was also Teresa Helper, former attorney with the Legal Aid Justice Center. And these people were rejected, and we know why they were rejected, even though the City Council wants to keep it secret. They were rejected because of their views. They were rejected because they believed and exercised their rights under the First Amendment. And that's shameful on the City Council.
Thank you so much for, it's really important, I think, that these perspectives are allowed to be heard, and thank you so much for sharing what you have. This has got to be the last one because we have got to be out of here. But I really appreciate that we're going to capture what you've said.
Well, I didn't introduce myself when I spoke earlier, but I was one of the people too that did the bylaws, the first started. And also I'm a member of the People's Coalition. And my question is this. If the city council, everybody on city council can make us get a stipend or check, fee, why can't the people on this board get a fee? Because most of these people, they only get to meet once a month. And I know they have to really catch up. And it's only fair if they be given some kind of fee.
Thank you, and that certainly is a suggestion that has gotten a lot of support, so thank you all. I just want to say thank you. This is, there's a lot of history here. There's deep history, there's lots of work and passion and so much at stake for all of you here. So I just want to appreciate that you came out and are willing to share what you've been fighting for and what you think will help make this work better. Really appreciate it. So thank you to each of you for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'm sorry that we have to conclude, but we have to be out of here by 8 o'clock. But I will ask you a special favor. If you have additional questions, comments, want to help, another forum for you to do that is to participate in our monthly meetings. Show up, tell us exactly how you feel during those monthly meetings, and know that whether the answer is yes or no, if there's something that you're recommending that makes sense, I will most assuredly provide that as a recommendation to the council to make certain changes, okay? That's the best that I can do. But know this, whether it may not seem like it to you, we actually have made significant accomplishments in the last year and a half, 2 years. So, but thank you again. There's additional information in bags in the back if you want to share with people that you know. All of our contact information is located in the bags in the back. There's some giveaways in the back as well. But again, like I said, I would love to see you at our monthly meetings, and thank you all for coming very much.